mentioned that I'm a AI-powered leader trainer. Maybe I'll explain some more about that later. I have about 30 years of corporate experience, mostly in tech, some of it in retail, but even the retail experience is mostly e-commerce. So during my time in corporate, I actually went through similar, let's say, tech changes that we're experiencing today, like the widespread introduction of internet and how it changed the business in our lives, and then mobile phones and how they change business in our lives. And I'm seeing many similarities also now with what's going on with the AI and AI hype. The only difference is that it really is a hype, that there's much more money invested in it, and that it's happening much faster. I'm also a coach, and when the opportunity came, I joined the pilot program for it's called AI Superpowered Mentors and Coaches. It doesn't mean that we are now all coaching with AI or that we're promoting that, maybe quite the opposite, because we were challenged from the very beginning of what it would be for AI to coach instead of us, or to bring AI into our coaching practice. And as coaches, we rebelled, which opened a lot of space for discussion of ethical considerations and how we use AI in our work and in our life. And I will maybe draw on some of those experiences also as I go through this presentation. So AI is already in our lives. We cannot hide from it. We cannot say, oh, I'm not going to do this thing. I'm just going to push it away. It's like, life and death. Because it is if you're using YouTube, if you're using Netflix, Spotify, it's already there. It's giving you guidance. If you have a Roomba in your home, it's there. It knows your floor plan. God knows what other information it might be collecting. If you're using any GPS, it's also using AI intelligence. Our cars, the modern cars, have all kinds of AI tools in them. Some of the cars, there was a big, I think it's even a lawsuit in the States. Some of the cars were collecting information about drivers, the way they drive, and sending that information to insurance companies, et cetera, et cetera. So at the same time, AI also has a very long history. Most people don't realize that. But the first thoughts about how smart can machines be actually came right after World War II, because during the World War, usually wars, they enhance technologies. So after World War II, there was a guy, actually a scientist, Turing, and he wanted to know if a computer could ever be smarter than a machine. So he also developed what's called the Turing test. And I was shocked when I found out that the same test is being applied today in assessing whether the models that we are using with the large language models are smart and whether they are developing the intelligence. The AI, so calling it artificial intelligence, was coined by scientist John McCarthy. He's on the picture down there. First, he was calling the computers thinking machines, and then during a conference at Dartmouth in the 1950s, they decided to call that development of these thinking machines should be called the artificial intelligence. So again, not something from yesterday. There was a long period in 1970s to the beginning of 80s where, nothing much was going on. But then in the 1980s, especially with IBM mainframes, so like more data power and data storage, there were some targeted applications of what can these thinking machines do. And the most famous one of these was Deep Blue from IBM Watson, the mainframe. Playing chess. I remember that it went on for several rounds, but the biggest shock came when the IBM machine beat Garry Kasparov in a chess match, a really, really long chess match. So then sort of AI kind of disappeared. We weren't really talking much about it, but it started seeping into our lives through very targeted and narrow applications. And it wasn't until the cost of computers, or the computing power, the special chips that were developed by NVIDIA, that were mostly for gamers, that's why they were really much faster, And some specific prediction models all of a sudden converged and combined, that large language models were developed or started to be developed. I'm sure they were being trained, because the first I started listening about artificial intelligence was during COVID when I audited a course. So they were being trained and trained, these models, until I'm sure they ran out of materials. And then ChatGPT just, made the step and introduced it to the world. And I'm sure that whoever is using the free version is just training their models, the ones that are putting out. We are now 2 or 3 years into this, most of us in an overwhelm by this AI wave. The economics of all these models are extremely confusing because huge amounts of money are being poured into them. There's a new model that comes out regardless of the company, but it comes out about every 6 weeks, and then the use of it peaks within 3 weeks. We as humans, with our brains, we can only absorb what these models are able to do. We need about 3 to 6 months in order to really process that. And as we are processing that, we are also looking for applications. So for anything that can be enterprise scale rollout, 1 to 3 years, and I'm not aware of a company that's really done it yet. The model performance obviously is improving. If nothing else, they're throwing more and more machines at it, not necessarily optimizing the models, but putting more power into them. And so the first focus was efficiency. So we can do this faster, we can do this without people, because these machines can work faster than people. However, in the past few months, this narrative is starting to change. Even the companies that have been laying off people, saying no, machines can do it better, they're now refocusing and saying no, machine together with a human can do it much better, not necessarily just a machine. So this is leaving companies to really check their HR strategies, what kind of people to hire, what kind of skills, what to do with the employees that are inside their companies that know the companies but would probably need to be reskilled, and how to develop the organizations of the future. And I'll just leave it here. It's not something that I want to discuss today. But what I wanted to focus more in the next few minutes that I have is, what if we don't take the AI is here to take our jobs, that AI is something evil and after us, but what if we say that AI could help us become a better leader or a better whatever we are in our lives? And so if I look through this, through the 4P model, usually the 4P model is explained as people and then the other three. In the case of AI, I would say you need to start with purpose. And not just in companies, but in anything you do with AI, you need to start with purpose. You need to figure out what it is that you want to use AI for, what it is that you want to accomplish with AI, and not get stuck in the millions of tools that are being thrown at us every day. So if you really focus on what it is that we want to achieve, then you can start thinking about the tools. Then that forces you to think about the data infrastructure or the data that you would need to feed into that model. Then you can consider the cybersecurity and check if that tool really is secure, who might have access to it. And then you can start thinking about all kinds of ethical considerations and the governance that you want to put in place. So in that coaching program that I'm in, first they did throw a bunch of tools at us. First they did tell us you should use all of this. Once we rebelled, they said, okay, now sit down, break down your coaching process, figure out where AI might be useful in this coaching process, and then figure out which tools you might be wanting to use. And if from the beginning, a lot of us were saying, oh, and then you can use this for that, and you should or you shouldn't use that and that, that really made me sit down and think about, okay, so if I do, in the case of team coaching, would want to record something, then what would I want to use? And which tools really support the languages that I use in my team coaching? And going back to ethical considerations, would the people that I work with, would they agree for these sessions to be recorded? And if these sessions are recorded, there's no point in me just recording them. Then I would want the AI tool to also make a summary and a list of action points. And would the participants agree to that? And if they do agree to that, what kind of security does this tool offer? Or is it only collecting data? And this might, the contents of the session might end up somewhere to somebody in a few years. So really, it's the purpose and then all kinds of analysis for us to be really able to say, yes, I am using this tool safely, and yes, this is going to help me towards my goals. Then the second part is the people, especially if you're working in an organization or with the group. So the ethics and the ethics and the governance that you bring in for purpose are absolutely critical, because if you do not show to everybody using these systems, whether they are your employees or whether they're your customers or any other stakeholder that's interacting with them, they will not actually, the tool that you've implemented will not be successful. So there's an INSEAD study. I'm just going to say like very briefly, and then I can share if anybody is interested. They came up with that there's 4 types of people, how they interact. They range from, yes, completely, I'm totally into this, to I totally don't trust this. But whichever part of that scale you're from, you're going to be feeding the tool different types of data. So if you're totally into it, you're going to give it too much data. If you totally don't believe it, then you're going to start anonymizing too much, not feeding it data, etc. So, how does that affect the quality of what you're trying to create and what you're trying to accomplish? With people, if you do go ahead and do this in organizations, then, first thing is to build trust and safety. And then start thinking about reskilling and upskilling. Because just dismissing people because they're not comfortable with AI or because they don't know how to use it, if you go that route, you're losing what's an even bigger gift or a bigger treasure that you have. It's all kinds of knowledge, the intuition, the historical information that these people have about the company, and also the loyalty that they might have towards the company. The planet, I struggled with that one because currently the models that are being developed are oversized. Currently, there's a big, fight about who is going to build a bigger data center and who is going to use more electricity, etc. If you're starting to use or even if the companies are building something for themselves, then they build something much narrower. Yeah. Then they build something much smaller. If you go back to the purpose, this is what I want to achieve, and then you build something much smaller that's helping you achieve that. At the same time, using AI, if again, going back to the purpose, could give you better visibility of what's going on inside the organization. Most companies are starting to use it for supply chain optimization, so hopefully also reducing the carbon footprint. Most or some of them, especially if it's in their purpose statement that they want to create greener products or more sustainable products, they will focus the tool on reuse or like structuring the processes around reuse. You are able to model climate risks if you provide it with enough data. And you can help visualize complex environmental issues. So basically, all these models are very good at structuring data and helping you make a case. If you don't just take what's being input in them, like you really work with them. And then profit would come last. Again, if you've started with the purpose and you have embedded ethics into the model or what you want to achieve, then the focus here should be long term. And if it is long term, then it should be more sustainable. So you should be looking for something that is optimized, that is low cost, that has better forecasting, and that also allows smaller companies to scale. So you don't need a huge organization. You could be smaller, and you could use AI efficiently to help you scale and to make a bigger impact on the world. And I'll stop here, Sonia, because I know we're stuck.
Thank you. Thank you, Lea, for this overview about the history of AI, about how AI can support us in creating value for peace, and about how needed it is to really support all the capacities of a human being and the capacity of the machine, as it was said. I'm aware that we need to close this meeting, but we still, if you want, we still are here to answer any questions, to hear your comments. So